Chapter 3. Multitasking. Unable and unwilling to imagine what Angelique could be going through at this very moment, Karnak chose to focus on the road ahead. He sat behind the steering wheel of the large monster of a machine Marx had built for clearing the path of hazards. With the pointed steel contraptions added to the front of the deuce and a half, its appearance was more of an old railroad locomotive than a military truck. At the moment, it roared down the highway while Karnak focused on returning to the armory to gear up for a two-man and one-pissed-off woman mission. The three occupants of the highway locomotive each had their own reason for taking part in the mission ahead. Karnak, however, had several reasons, such as the man who killed his best friend and commander was going to be there, and just as important, so was the woman he had loved since childhood. Angelique had been on his mind since the day she re-entered his life by putting him down into the dirt, just as she had done when they were younger. The feeling only grew as they spent a great deal of their free time together, right up to the minute she exited his life once more. Though he had wanted to stop her, he knew that, with someone as strong as she had become, it was not worth the attempt. Besides, she was in search of her family, and he would have done the same if it were his parents who had been arrested. Many times, Karnak thought he too would have felt the urge to leave and check on his parents, but it never became more than a thought since they had died in a car crash years ago. However, he knew that if they were still alive, his father would have it all under control. Kate rode along watching for threats as different objects appeared from around the twisting and turning of the highway, determined not to let anything detour the mission. Intently she stared, so intense that at times she had to force her eyelids to blink. Kate's purpose on this mission was to get revenge against the man who had killed the man she loved, Captain Sawyer. Kate swore to herself that nothing else was going to stop her from finding him. There would be no other missions until this one was finished. Sitting between Karnak and Kate, wiping down his rifle and applying fresh oil to the parts he could clean without field stripping, was Robert. Robert's reason for the mission was easy: kill the man who had murdered Sawyer and escape the last bullet he'd sent his way. All three rode silently as they scrutinized each car, truck, building, and any other object that came into view. Civilization was not at its best since the comforts electricity brought were taken away. Every day was rife with dangers, and as they were confronted with them, their senses heightened. All around cars lay with dust building upon the once shiny paint, now only monuments to the lives they once led. Monuments and possible hiding places for death to lurk, waiting to trap an innocent traveler. "Whoa, slow down," Kate said quickly and calmly as all her internal alarms began to sound at the sight ahead. As the road curved to the left, Kate spotted the obstruction merely a second before Karnak and Robert. Without hesitation, Karnak did as Kate said, not questioning what she had seen. Quickly, Karnak removed his foot from the accelerator over to the brake, and just as his left foot pressed in on the clutch, his right hand pulled back on the shifter simultaneously. With the sudden loss of forward motion, the large truck slowed quickly, causing all three of its passengers to brace themselves as they continued forward. Yet they never took their eyes off the obstruction ahead. Rather than just slow down, Karnak came to a full stop when they had come within 100 yards of what they could now see was a barricade made up of vehicles, a dumpster, and even an electric pole that had been obviously cut down from alongside the road, where many of its wires still lay. The seconds passed as Karnak just stared out the windshield at the people running back and forth behind the barricade. He thought to himself with amusement at how easy it would be to just drive the big highway locomotive right through the ragtag barricade. A grin appeared on his face, though neither Kate nor Robert was looking at him to see. A grin at the thought of the people behind the cars flying through the air, like pins being struck by a bowling ball. "Just give it hell. That shit won't even slow this truck down," Kate said, wanting to move on with the mission. Robert nodded, agreeing with her statement. A few more seconds passed as Karnak still sat staring ahead before he finally spoke. "Cover me," Karnak said casually, after putting on the emergency brake and then opening the door to step out. Stunned and unable to speak, Robert and Kate just looked at each other as Karnak dropped to the ground. Quickly, they shook off the surprise and began to move as they were ordered. Kate swung open her door and brought her rifle to rest in the door jamb between the cab and the door. Robert moved as quickly as he could with being caught off guard. The small space of the cab made it difficult to move the long Noreen rifle he carried. Nevertheless, he had the rifle in position much the same as Kate had, only seconds after Karnak had exited. But even in those seconds, Karnak was already out in front of the truck and walking toward the barricade with hands empty and arms stretched out to his side. "What the hell is he doing?" Robert asked Kate without removing his eyes from his rifle scope. "How the hell should I know?" Kate replied in a tone to ensure that Robert understood it was a stupid question. The two watched as Karnak walked toward the barricade as if nothing could harm him. Through his rifle scope, Robert could see the confusion on the faces of those who had created the barricade, as they too watched the man walking over to them. "Well, at least they look just as confused as we are." Robert snickered just loud enough for Kate to hear him. "I am Sir Commander Karnak," he said loudly so that everyone could hear, almost forgetting that he was no longer a sergeant. "We don't care what you call yourself. Leave everything and walk back the way you came, and we will not kill you," a voice replied to him from the other side of an old pickup. Karnak stopped about 25 yards from the barricade and looked around at the faces hiding behind it. From the many faces he could see, only a few measured up to what he considered a low-level threat. After a quick assessment of the situation, Karnak felt a strong wave of sadness come over him at the thought of this, the new United States. Knowing that it was no path to go down, he pushed the thoughts to the farthest reaches of his mind before replying to the voice's command. "Well, first thing, I want to be up front with you and clear. Second, that is not going to happen." "We have you," a voice began to reply. Karnak lowered his arms to his side and then quickly raised his right hand up with his palm directed to the speaker, signaling him to stop. "Third, the guy you have on the bluff is already in the crosshairs of the man behind me, and I venture to say he's probably not as good of a marksman. Then you have the issue of the lady on the passenger side. Let me explain just how this would play out if you started firing. Since all of you have your weapons pointed at an unarmed man like myself, you kill me, but that gives her more than enough time to kill all of you." Karnak grinned just a little as he saw the surprise on the faces of those behind the barricade and watched as all of them pointed their weapons away from him. "Okay, now I am feeling just a little left out. You over there," Karnak addressed the person closest to him with a rifle. "Point your rifle at me. Just because I am unarmed doesn't mean I am not a threat." "What the hell is he doing?" Kate asked, now feeling the many guns facing in her direction. "Well, you have to say one thing. He gave them great tips," Robert said sarcastically. Now with those behind the barricade set up properly, Karnak placed his hands behind his back and stood relaxed. "Now that we have that taken care of, we can move forward. If you created this barricade for the FEMA people who were picking people up, we have taken care of that. Next, we have food, medical aid, drinking water, and other supplies we are happy to share at the armory. Does anyone here know where I'm talking about?" Karnak asked, and then looked around. After seeing a hand raise in the air, Karnak continued, "Great. When you get there, just tell the soldiers at the gate you want to join the UCM, and they will get you squared away. Now you have 3 minutes to get this shit out of my way." Karnak dropped his arms to his side, and without another word turned and began walking back to a very bewildered Robert and Kate. Robert waited for Karnak to near the truck before retracting from his position. While waiting, he watched as a great number of people hurried to move the obstacles from the highway. Seeing Karnak now coming alongside the truck, Robert slid back into the cab, where he waited for Karnak to climb in before asking, "How did you know that would work?" Settling into his seat and looking over to make sure Kate had her side secure, Karnak replied, "I didn't, but one thing is certain. They are still Americans. And even though it doesn't look like it, we cannot forget where we are. They're just scared and looking for a little safety." With the barricades removed from their path in record time, Karnak revved the motor and released the clutch, sending the beast of a machine forward down the highway. As they passed where the barricade had been, Kate felt the need to say something about what had just happened. "Next time we come across people with guns in a fortified position, can we avoid giving them tips?" Kate asked, still a little unnerved by Karnak having them take aim at her. Karnak acknowledged her with a slight smile, knowing that she was not really asking a question but making a statement. The three continued to scan the area just as before, watching for any new obstacles that awaited them. Only miles from the armory, the three were thankful that they had not encountered any further resistance along the way. But one thing had caught their attention. Large columns of smoke that none of them wanted to believe were originating from the armory. The more time that passed, and the closer they came to their exit, the more the disbelief faded. Taking the exit for Militia Drive, Karnak brought the vehicle to a stop before reaching the top of the ramp. "We don't know what this is, but I'm not wasting any more time." While Karnak spoke, he could hear Kate mumble, "Really? Can't we get a break?" Karnak assumed she was talking about the situation and time off and continued. "Robert, hold on to the back and get off before you can be seen. Cover us from the hilltop. Kate and I are taking this beast in. Simple enough?" "Got it," Kate responded while opening the passenger door. "Roger," Robert replied as he made his way out Kate's side of the truck, sliding by Kate, who now stood on the step just outside the open door. Within seconds, they were set and rolling down Militia Drive, Karnak driving, Kate with 4 loaded magazines in her lap and a rifle held just outside the window, and Robert with his rifle strapped to his back, holding on to the rear gate of the truck and hoping that Karnak slowed just a little before it was time for him to let go.